The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, wrapped in cream-colored paper with a red silk ribbon. To anyone else, it might have looked like a thoughtful gesture. But to Daniel Matthews, a Royal Security officer with 12 years of experience, it looked like a problem. He stood in the mail processing room of Kensington Palace. Staring at the box on the steel table in front of him, no return address. No official stamp. Just a handwritten label that read, "For Kate Middleton, with admiration." Daniel's jaw tightened. His hands, steady from years of training, reached for the scanner. Outside, London was waking up. Tourists gathered near the palace gates hoping for a glimpse of royalty. Inside, the morning routine continued as usual. Staff prepared breakfast. Guards changed shifts. Everything moved like clockwork. But in that small, windowless room, Daniel felt the weight of something different. He wasn't alone. His colleague, Officer Sarah Chen, stood beside him, clipboard in hand. She had been logging packages all morning. Flowers from well-wishers. Letters from schoolchildren. The usual wave of admiration that followed the Princess of Wales everywhere. "Another one?" Sarah asked, glancing at the cream-wrapped box. Daniel nodded. No return address. Sarah's expression shifted. She knew what that meant. They both did. Every gift, every letter, every package sent to any member of the royal family went through this room first. It was protocol. It was protection. And it was necessary because people love the royals. But some people love them too much. Daniel positioned the box under the X-ray machine. The screen flickered to life, casting a pale blue glow across his face. He pressed the button. The conveyor belt hummed softly as the package moved through the scanner. For a moment, there was only the sound of the machine, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead, Sarah's pen tapping against her clipboard. Then the image appeared on the screen. Daniel froze. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes narrowed, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. It wasn't flowers. It wasn't chocolates. It wasn't a handmade card or a book of poems. It was something else entirely. Sarah leaned closer, her face inches from the screen. "What is that?" Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't, because what he was looking at didn't make sense. Not for a gift. Not for anything sent to a member of the royal family. His hand moved to the radio, clipped to his belt. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat louder than the last. "We need to call this in," he said quietly. Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" Daniel looked at her, then back at the screen. The image was clear. "To clear, I'm sure." He pressed the button on his radio. His voice was calm, professional, even though his mind was racing. "Control, this is Matthews in mail processing. We have a code yellow. I repeat, code yellow. We need bomb disposal and senior security down here immediately." The response came through instantly. "Confirmed, Matthews. Teams are on their way. Secure the area. Do not touch the package." Daniel lowered the radio. He looked at the box, sitting innocently on the conveyor belt. Cream paper. Red ribbon. A message written in careful handwriting, and inside, something that could change everything. Sarah took a step back. Her hand trembled slightly as she set down her clipboard. "Do you think it's real?" Daniel stared at the screen. "At the wires? At the shapes that shouldn't be there?" "I don't know," he said, "but we're about to find out." The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. And in the distance, Daniel could hear the sound of footsteps. Fast, urgent. The kind of footsteps that meant danger was already here, before you find out what happens next. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of this story. You won't believe what they discovered inside because, what Daniel saw on that screen would haunt him for the rest of his life. Asterisk, asterisk, the bomb disposal team arrived within 4 minutes. 3 specialists in protective gear, moving with the kind of efficiency that comes from facing death regularly. Their leader, a man named Thomas Reed, approached the table where the package sat. Daniel stepped back, giving them space. His hands were still steady, but his mind was racing. 12 years on the job. This was the first time he'd seen something like this. Thomas studied the X-ray image on the screen. He didn't speak, didn't react, just looked, his eyes moving across every detail. Finally, he turned to Daniel. "You made the right call." Those 5 words sent a chill down Daniel's spine. Sarah had been evacuated along with the rest of the mail processing staff. The corridor outside was now empty, sealed off by armed guards. Somewhere above them, the palace continued its morning routine, unaware of what was happening in the basement, unaware that danger had walked right through the front gates. Wrapped in pretty paper, Thomas pulled out a portable scanning device. More advanced than the standard X-ray, he moved it slowly over the package, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "Talk to me," one of his team members said through the radio. "What are we looking at?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice measured and calm. "We have what appears to be a cylindrical device, approximately 6 inches long, multiple wires, a battery pack, and something that looks like a triggering mechanism." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Those weren't the words you wanted to hear." "Not ever. Not here. Is it live?" The voice on the radio asked. Thomas moved the scanner again, checking the internal components. "It appears to be armed. Yes. But there's something else." "What?" "The configuration doesn't match any standard explosive device I've seen. The wiring pattern is unusual, almost deliberate." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" Thomas glanced at him. "It could mean whoever made this wanted it to look like a bomb. Or it could mean they're using a design we haven't encountered before. Which is worse?" Daniel asked. "Because if it's fake, we still can't open it without being sure. And if it's real, we don't know what we're dealing with." He straightened up, pulling out his phone. He dialed a number, waited. "Sir, it's Red. We have a situation at Kensington. I need the full team, and I need authorization to evacuate the West Wing." Daniel heard the response through the phone's speaker, a sharp, authoritative voice. "Evacuate." "How serious is this, Thomas?" "Serious enough that I'm not taking chances. If this thing goes off, we're not just talking about one room. The blast radius could reach the main corridor." There was a pause. "Then do it. Clear everyone out. I'll notify the palace supervisor." Thomas ended the call. He looked at Daniel. "You should leave too. This is beyond your clearance now." "Oh." Daniel shook his head. "I found it. I'm staying. That's not how this works." "Then tell me to leave," Daniel said. "Give me a direct order." Thomas studied him for a moment. Then he sighed. "Fine. But you stay behind the barrier. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" Daniel nodded. The next 30 minutes felt like hours. Thomas and his team worked with tools Daniel had never seen before. Instruments that could measure heat signatures, electrical currents, and chemical compositions without ever touching the package itself. Every few minutes, Thomas would relay information to someone on the other end of the radio. Daniel could hear fragments of conversation. Words like detonator and unstable and secondary trigger, none of them were comforting. At one point, Thomas held up a hand, signaling everyone to stop moving. The room went completely silent. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat, loud and insistent in his ears. Thomas leaned closer to the package, staring at something Daniel couldn't see. "There's a note," Thomas said quietly. "A note." Daniel stepped forward. "Inside the box?" "No. Attached to the device itself. I can see it through the scan. It's written on a small piece of paper tucked beside the battery pack." "What does it say?" Thomas adjusted the scanner, trying to get a clearer image. The letters were tiny, barely visible on the screen. He squinted, reading slowly. It says, "I just wanted you to notice me." The words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Not fear. Something else. Something sadder. "Whoever sent this," Thomas said softly. "They wanted attention. They wanted to be seen." "But why?" Daniel asked. "Why go this far?" Thomas didn't answer. He didn't need to, because they both knew the answer. Some people loved the royals so much, they forgot where admiration ended and obsession began. They forgot that the people in the palace were human, with families, with fears, with lives that mattered. They forgot everything except the desperate need to be noticed. Thomas straightened up. He looked at his team. All right, we're opening it, slowly, by the book. Everyone in blast suits. Matthews, you're leaving now. But now, Thomas said firmly. I'm not letting you risk your life for this. Go. Daniel wanted to argue. Wanted to stay. But he saw the look in Thomas's eyes. The look that said this wasn't a request. He turned and walked toward the door. Behind him, he heard Thomas giving orders. Heard the sound of equipment being moved into place. And as Daniel stepped into the corridor, sealing the door behind him, one thought echoed in his mind. What kind of person sends a bomb to someone they claim to admire? He was about to find out. Daniel stood in the corridor, his back against the cold wall. Through the reinforced door, he could hear muffled voices, the sound of tools, the occasional beep of electronic equipment. Every second felt like an eternity. He checked his watch. 12 minutes since he'd left the room. 12 minutes of not knowing if the next sound he heard would be an explosion that tore through the basement and shattered the morning calm. His radio crackled. Matthews, this is Control. What's your status? He pressed the button. Standing by outside the processing room. Disposal team is working on the package now. Understood? The Princess of Wales has been informed. She's been moved to a secure location as a precaution. Daniel closed his eyes. Kate Middleton, the woman the package had been addressed to. He'd seen her in person a few times over the years. Always gracious. Always kind. The kind of person who remembered names, who asked about families, the kind of person who didn't deserve to have her life threatened by someone, claiming to admire her. The radio crackled again. Matthews, we've got the sender's information. Handwriting analysis matched it to letters we've received before. Multiple letters over the past 6 months, all sent to the princess. All expressing excessive admiration. Do we have a name? Daniel asked. Working on it. The letters were sent from different post offices across London. No return address, but the handwriting is consistent. Same person, every time. Daniel felt a chill. 6 months. 6 months of letters, escalating from words to this. From admiration to obsession. From love to something darker. Has the princess seen any of these letters? He asked. No. They were all flagged and filed. Protocol. That was something at least. Kate had been protected from knowing. Protected from the fear of realizing someone out there was watching her so closely. Thinking about her so intensely. But now, she would know. There was no way around it. The door to the processing room suddenly opened. Thomas stepped out, pulling off his protective helmet. His face was pale, and there was something in his eyes that Daniel had never seen before. Relief mixed with something else. Something that looked like confusion. It's safe, Thomas said. The package is open. Daniel exhaled, the tension draining from his body. Thank God. So it wasn't a real bomb? Thomas hesitated. Come see for yourself. That wasn't the answer Daniel expected. He followed Thomas back into the room. The other specialists stood around the table, their faces unreadable. The cream-colored wrapping paper had been carefully removed, set aside in an evidence bag. The box itself was open, and inside. Daniel stared, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. There were wires, yes. A battery pack, yes. A cylindrical device that looked exactly like something designed to explode. But it wasn't a bomb. It was a music box, a handmade music box. It's constructed with wires and circuits and a small speaker. The triggering mechanism was actually a motion sensor. Designed to activate when the box was opened, Thomas reached down and carefully lifted a small component. The music box began to play. A soft, delicate melody filled the room. A lullaby. The kind of song you'd sing to a child. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Not from fear this time. From something else. Something that felt like sadness and anger and pity all mixed together. There's more, Thomas said quietly. He stepped aside, revealing what else was in the box. Photographs. Dozens of them. All of Kate Middleton. Some cut from magazines. Some printed from websites. Arranged carefully, lovingly, around the music box, and beneath the photographs, letters, handwritten pages covered in small, neat script. Thomas picked up one of the letters, holding it carefully with gloved hands. He read aloud, "Dear Kate, I know you don't know me, but I feel like I know you. I've watched you for so long. Seen you smile, seen you with your children, seen you be everything I wish I could be. You're perfect. You're beautiful. You're everything this world needs. I made this for you because I wanted to give you something special, something that shows how much I care, how much I think about you. Every day, every night. I hope when you hear the music you'll think of me. Just once. That's all I want. Just to know that you noticed me, that I matter to you the way you matter to me." The words hung in the air, fragile and desperate. Thomas set the letter down. There are 43 letters in here, all the same, all expressing the same obsession. Daniel looked at the music box, still playing its soft melody. He thought about the person who made it, who spent hours wiring it together, making it look dangerous enough to get attention, but harmless enough to claim innocence. "This wasn't meant to hurt her," Daniel said slowly. "It was meant to scare us, to force us to bring it directly to her attention."
Amos nodded.
"Exactly. If it had looked like an ordinary gift, it would have been screened and filed away. She never would have known. But make it look like a threat, and suddenly everyone's paying attention. Suddenly, it becomes important." "It's manipulation," Daniel said. "Emotional manipulation. It's obsession," Thomas corrected. "And it's dangerous. Because someone who goes this far doesn't stop. They escalate." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Do we know who sent it?" "Forensics is pulling fingerprints now. The handwriting matches previous letters, so we should have a lead soon." "But Daniel," Thomas paused, his voice dropping, "this person knows the palace routines, knows how mail is processed. They knew exactly how to make this package look threatening enough to get past initial screening, but not obviously dangerous enough to be destroyed on sight." "You're saying they've been watching, learning?" "Saying they've been planning this for months. Maybe longer." Daniel looked at the photographs scattered around the music box. Kate's face smiling in every image. Unaware that somewhere in London, someone was collecting these pictures, studying them, building an entire fantasy around a person they'd never met. The music box wound down, the melody slowing until it stopped completely. The silence that followed felt heavy. "We need to find them," Daniel said. "Before they try something else?" Thomas nodded.
"We will."
"But Daniel, there's something else you should know." "What?" Thomas picked up another letter from the box. This one was different, shorter, written on different paper. He read, "If you don't notice me this time, I'll have to try harder. I'll have to make sure you can't ignore me. I'll have to come closer. Please don't make me come closer." Daniel felt ice in his veins. "This isn't over," Thomas said quietly. "This was just the beginning. Somewhere in London, someone was waiting. Watching the news, waiting to see if their gift had been received, waiting to see if they'd finally been noticed." The forensics team worked through the afternoon. Fingerprints were lifted from the box, the letters, the music box itself. Each piece of evidence was photographed, cataloged, analyzed. Daniel sat in the security office, watching the investigation unfold on multiple screens. His shift should have ended hours ago, but he couldn't leave.
Not now.
Not when he was the one who'd found the package. Not when he felt responsible for what might come. Next, Detective Inspector Helen Morrison arrived at 3 o'clock. She was in her 40s sharp, with the kind of presence that made people pay attention when she walked into a room. She'd spent 15 years working protective services for the royal family. She'd seen obsession before, but something about this case unsettled her. "Officer Matthews," she said, sitting across from Daniel. "Walk me through it." From the beginning, Daniel told her everything. The cream-colored paper, the red ribbon, the moment the x-ray revealed something that looked like a bomb, the music box, the letters, the final threat. Helen listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "The handwriting matches letters we've been tracking," she said finally. 47 letters over 6 months, all sent to the princess. They started innocuous compliments, admiration, but they've been escalating, becoming more personal, more possessive. Why didn't anyone flag this sooner? Daniel asked. He did. We've had a team monitoring the situation for weeks, but until today, there was no direct threat. Just words. Just someone expressing what seemed like harmless admiration. She paused. We were wrong. Daniel leaned forward. Do we have a name? Helen opened a folder, pulling out a photograph. We do now. Fingerprints came back with a match. Meet Claire Whitmore, 34 years old. Works as a librarian in Camden. No criminal record. No history of violence. By all accounts, a completely normal person. Daniel looked at the photo. Claire had a kind face, soft features. The kind of person you'd pass on the street and never notice. How does someone like this become dangerous? He asked. Helen sighed. Obsession doesn't always look the way you expect. Claire isn't angry. She isn't violent. She's lonely. She's built an entire emotional world around someone she's never met. And in her mind, Kate Middleton isn't a stranger. She's a friend, a confidant, someone who understands her. But Kate doesn't know she exists. Exactly. And that's the problem. Because in Claire's mind, this relationship is real. It's important. It matters. And when reality doesn't match the fantasy, obsession becomes dangerous. Daniel thought about the letters, the photographs, the music box that took hours to build. Where is she now? He asked. We have officers heading to her flat as we speak. We'll bring her in for questioning. But Daniel, you need to understand something. Helen's voice was serious now. Even if we arrest Claire, even if we charge her, this doesn't end. People like her don't just stop. They fixate. They find ways to continue the connection, even from behind bars. So what do? We protect the princess. We increase security. We monitor all communication. And we hope that Claire gets the help she needs before she does something we can't come back from.
Yes.
Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah.
Just saw the news?
Are you okay? He typed back quickly. Fine. Long day. I'll explain later. But he wasn't fine. Not really. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw that X-ray image. Saw the wires in the battery pack and the thing that could have been a bomb. And he thought about how close they'd come to something terrible. Helen's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression darkening. When? Are you certain? She hung up, looking at Daniel. Claire's not at her flat. Neighbors say they haven't seen her in 2 days. Daniel's stomach dropped. Where is she? We don't know, but we found something else. Her apartment is covered in photographs of the princess. Walls, ceiling, every surface. And there's a map on her desk. A map of Kensington Gardens with walking routes marked. Routes the princess takes with her children. The room suddenly felt colder. She's been watching, Daniel said quietly. Not just from far away. She's been close. Following them, Helen stood up. We need to inform the princess immediately. And we need to find Claire before she gets any closer. But finding someone who didn't want to be found was harder than it sounded. Especially someone who'd spent months learning routines, studying schedules, memorizing every detail of Kate's public life. Claire Whitmore knew more about the princess's movements than most of the palace staff. She knew when Kate dropped her children at school, knew which cafes she stopped at, knew the routes she took through the gardens, the times she visited the park, the moments when security was lightest. She'd been preparing for months, and now she was gone. Helen and Daniel stood in the security office, watching as alerts went out across London. Police officers were shown Claire's photo. Security at all royal residences was increased. Armed guards were positioned at every entrance to Kensington Palace, but it still felt like they were one step behind. She's planned this, Helen said. Whatever she's going to do next, she's already thought it through. Daniel stared at the map on the screen, showing Claire's marked routes through Kensington Gardens. His mind raced, trying to think like someone whose entire world had become one person, The letter said she'd come closer if she wasn't noticed, Daniel said slowly. What if she's already close? What if she's been waiting for this moment? Helen's eyes widened. You think she knew we'd find the package? I think she wanted us to find it. She wanted us to know she exists. To tell the princess about her? Because in her mind, that's connection. That's recognition. But if we already know about her, why disappear? Daniel's blood ran cold. Because now that she has our attention, she doesn't need to send packages anymore. She can deliver her message in person. Helen grabbed her phone, dialing rapidly. This is Morrison. I need all units near Kensington Palace on high alert. Suspect may be in the vicinity. I repeat, suspect may already be close. Daniel looked at the time. 4:30. The school run would be ending soon. Parents picking up children. The normal chaos of afternoon routines. The perfect time to blend into a crowd. Where are the princess's children? He asked. Helen's face went pale. The school run. They're on their way back now. Daniel was already moving, grabbing his radio, heading for the door. Because somewhere in London, Claire Whitmore was watching, waiting, and she was done being invisible. Asterisk, the school was 15 minutes away. Daniel rode in the security vehicle with 3 other officers. Sirens silent, but lights flashing as they cut through London traffic. Helen was coordinating from the palace, her voice steady on the radio. Security team is already with the children, she said. They're safe. But we need eyes on every access point. Every street. Every crowd. Daniel stared out the window, scanning faces in the afternoon crowds. Parents with strollers. Tourists with cameras. People going about their ordinary lives, unaware that somewhere among them might be someone who'd spent 6 months building a fantasy around a woman she'd never met. The vehicle pulled up outside the school. Parents were gathered at the gates, waiting. The scene looked normal, peaceful. Too peaceful. Daniel's radio crackled. This is Unit 7. We have eyes on the princess's vehicle. Children are secure and loading now. He watched as the sleek black SUV pulled up to a side entrance. Security officers formed a protective barrier as 2 small figures were guided inside. Kate's children, their faces turned away from cameras, protected by the human wall around them, the vehicle doors closed. The convoy began to move, and that's when Daniel saw her, standing across the street. A woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a long coat despite the warm afternoon. Her hands were tucked in her pockets. Her eyes were fixed on the departing vehicle, Claire Whitmore. Contact, Daniel said into his radio. Suspect visual east side of the street, approximately 30 meters from the school entrance. The response was immediate. Do not approach. Maintain visual. Backup is incoming. But Daniel was already moving. He crossed the street, weaving through afternoon traffic. Parents glanced at him curiously, noting his uniform, his purposeful stride. Claire didn't run. She just stood there, watching the vehicle disappear around the corner. When Daniel was 10 meters away, she finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. Claire Whitmore. Daniel called out, his voice firm but not aggressive. She nodded slowly. I knew someone would come. I need you to keep your hands where I can see them. She pulled her hands from her pockets. They were empty. Shaking slightly, other officers arrived, forming a perimeter. Pedestrians were directed away. The casual afternoon energy shifted into something more tense. Daniel approached carefully. Claire, I'm Officer Matthews. I need you to come with me. We need to talk about the package you sent. Did she see it? Claire asked. Her voice was soft, almost hopeful. Did she see what I made for her? The package was intercepted. It never reached the princess. Something flickered across Claire's face. Disappointment. Deep, crushing disappointment. I spent weeks on that music box, she said. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted her to know how much I care. Claire, you made it look like a bomb. You've scared a lot of people. Had to, she said, and there were tears in her voice now. No one was paying attention. All those letters I sent, and nothing. No response. No acknowledgement. Like I didn't exist. Like I didn't matter. Daniel kept his voice calm. So you sent something that would force us to pay attention. I just wanted her to know my name, Claire said. Just to know that I exist, that I'm real, that I'm not just another face in the crowd. Helen's voice came through the radio in Daniel's earpiece. Transport is 2 minutes out. Keep her talking. Hey, Claire, Daniel said gently. Why were you here? At the school? She looked back at the empty street where the vehicle had been. I wanted to see her, just once. Not from a distance. Not in a photograph. I wanted to see her with my own eyes. To be in the same space, to exist in her world, even for a moment. You were going to approach her? Claire shook her head. No, I just wanted to see her. That's all. Just to be near her? But Daniel saw the way her hand twitched toward her pocket. Saw the way her eyes kept darting back to the street. What's in your pocket, Claire? He asked. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she pulled something out. A letter. Sealed in an envelope. Kate's name written on the front, in that same careful handwriting. I wrote her one more letter, Claire said. To explain everything. To help her understand. I thought, if I could just give it to her myself, if she could see my face, hear my voice, then she'd know I'm not dangerous. I'm not trying to hurt her. I just want her to know that someone out here really sees her, really understands her. Daniel extended his hand. Can I have the letter, Claire? She looked at it, her fingers trembling. For a moment, Daniel thought she might refuse, might try to run, might do something unpredictable. But then she placed it in his hand. Will you give it to her? She asked. Please. Will you make sure she reads it? Daniel didn't answer. Couldn't promise something he knew wouldn't happen. The transport vehicle arrived. 2 officers stepped forward, gently guiding Claire's arms behind her back. The handcuffs clicked into place. I'm not a bad person, Claire said, as they led her toward the vehicle. I'm not dangerous. I just wanted to matter. Just once. To someone. To her, Daniel watched as she was placed in the back of the vehicle. Watched as the doors closed. Watched as it drove away. Taking Claire Whitmore out of Kate's world and back into her own lonely reality, Helen appeared beside him. Good work. Daniel looked down at the letter in his hand. Felt the weight of it. The desperation sealed inside. She really believed Kate would understand, he said quietly. That's the tragedy of obsession, Helen replied. The person you fixate on becomes whoever you need them to be, not who they actually are. Daniel thought about the music box, the photographs, the months of letters. What happens to her now? He asked. Psychiatric evaluation, then charges. Likely a restraining order. Mandatory counseling. Helen paused. But the hardest part isn't the legal system. It's helping her understand that Kate Middleton isn't who she thought she was, that the relationship she built existed only in her mind. Will she ever understand that? Some do, some don't. Some spent the rest of their lives convinced they were misunderstood, that if only they'd had one more chance, one more moment, everything would have been different. Daniel looked at the letter again. Should I read it? It'll be entered as evidence. You'll have to eventually. He carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, covered in that familiar handwriting. Dear Kate, he read aloud. I know they think I'm dangerous. I know they think I want to hurt you. But that's not true. I would never hurt you. You're the only light in my life. The only thing that makes sense. When I see you smile, I forget about everything else. The loneliness. The emptiness. The feeling that I'm invisible to the world. You make me feel real. You make me feel like I matter. I know we've never met. I know you don't know me. But in my heart we're connected. We always have been. And I just needed you to know that someone out here loves you. Really, truly loves you. Not because you're a princess, but because you're you. That's all I wanted to say. That's all I needed. Just to be seen. Just to matter. Just for a moment. Yours always, Claire. Daniel folded the letter carefully. Helen was quiet beside him. She's not going to stop, is she? Daniel asked. Not easily, Helen admitted. The restraining order will help. The counseling might too. But Claire has spent 6 months building a world where Kate Middleton is her everything. Dismantling that world will take time. Maybe years? And in the meantime, we stay vigilant. Daniel looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, painting London in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the city, Kate Middleton was with her family, safe behind palace walls, unaware of the letter in Daniel's hands. Unaware of the woman who'd built a shrine to her in a Camden flat. Unaware of how close obsession had come to her world. But Daniel knew, and he would remember. Because the package wrapped in cream-colored paper had taught him something important. Sometimes, the most dangerous gifts come from people who claim to love you. Asterisk, 3 weeks later. Daniel stood in the same mail processing room where it all began. The morning routine had returned to normal. Packages arriving. Letters being scanned. Sarah was back at her station, clipboard in hand. But nothing felt quite the same. Daniel had read the full case file on Claire Whitmore. Learned about her childhood, her struggles with loneliness, her history of forming intense, one-sided attachments. The psychologist's report described it as parasocial relationship disorder taken to an extreme. Claire hadn't just admired Kate Middleton. She'd built her entire sense of self around her. The court had mandated treatment. Claire would spend time in a psychiatric facility, working with specialists who understood obsession and its roots. But the restraining order was absolute. She could never contact Kate, never approach her, never send another letter. For Claire, it meant losing the one person who'd made her feel less alone. Even though that person had never known she existed, for Daniel, it meant understanding how fragile the line was between admiration and obsession, how someone could cross it without even realizing. Another one, Sarah said, pulling Daniel from his thoughts. He looked over. Another package, wrapped carefully, addressed to the Princess of Wales. His chest tightened. Just for a moment, Sarah must have seen it on his face because she quickly added, "It's from a children's hospital in Manchester. Return address verified. They send her drawings from the kids every month." Daniel relaxed. Right, of course. He scanned it anyway. On the screen, he saw exactly what Sarah had described. Drawings. Cards. Nothing dangerous. Nothing suspicious, just children expressing genuine, innocent admiration for someone they looked up to. The difference was vast. And yet sometimes it started the same way. "You okay?" Sarah asked. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, just being careful." "We're always careful," she said gently. "But we can't live in fear of every package. Most people are good, Daniel. Most admiration is healthy." She was right. But Daniel couldn't shake the memory of that X-ray image. The wires. The battery pack. The music box that had been built with such care, such obsession. His shift ended at noon. He walked through the palace corridors, past tourists on guided tours, past staff preparing for afternoon events. Everything moved with its usual rhythm. He passed a window overlooking the gardens and stopped. Kate Middleton was there, walking with her children. She was laughing at something one of them said, her hand resting on a small shoulder. Security walked nearby, maintaining respectful distance but ever present. She looked happy, relaxed, unaware of the package that had been sent. Unaware of the woman who'd spent months watching her, following her, building a fantasy around her. That was good. That was how it should be. The princess shouldn't have to live in fear. Shouldn't have to wonder if every person in a crowd was someone who'd crossed the line from admiration to obsession. That burden fell on people like Daniel, people who stood between the public and the royals, watching for the moment when affection became dangerous. His phone buzzed. A text from Helen Morrison. "Claire's first evaluation went well. Doctors say she's responding to treatment. Long road ahead, but there's hope." Daniel typed back, "That's good news." It was, despite everything, Daniel didn't want Claire to suffer. He wanted her to get help, to understand what had happened, to find healthier ways to deal with loneliness and the need for connection. But he also knew that not everyone could be helped. Some obsessions ran too deep. Some fantasies were too powerful. That's why the screening room existed. Why officers like him spent their days looking at X-rays, opening packages, reading letters. Because most people were good. Some weren't, and you never knew which was which until you looked closely. Daniel continued walking, heading toward the staff exit. His next shift started tomorrow. More packages. More letters. More gifts from people who loved the royals, who wanted to express admiration, who meant no harm, and maybe, someday, another package that looked innocent but wasn't. Another person who'd crossed the line without meaning to. Another music box disguised as a bomb. He thought about the note Thomas had found inside Claire's package. I just wanted you to notice me. For years in security, and those 7 words haunted Daniel more than any actual threat, because they revealed something fundamental about human nature. The desperate need to be seen, to matter, to exist in someone else's world, even if that someone was a stranger Kate Middleton represented, something to millions of people, grace, kindness, a life that seemed perfect from the outside. And for someone like Claire, who felt invisible in her own life, that perfection became a beacon, a light that seemed to promise, if only she could reach it. She too could be something more. But the princess wasn't a symbol. She was a person, with fears, with responsibilities, with a life that was far more complicated than any photograph suggested. Claire had loved an idea, not a person. And when the idea didn't love her back, desperation turned into obsession. Daniel reached his car, climbed in, sat in silence for a moment. The cream-colored package was in evidence storage now. The music box, the letters, the photographs, all of it cataloged and filed away, but the memory of it remained. And tomorrow, when Daniel returned to work, he would remember, would look at every package with a little more scrutiny, would wonder about the hands that wrapped them, the hearts that sent them, would stay vigilant, stay careful, because protecting someone meant more than standing between them, an obvious danger. It meant understanding that sometimes the greatest threats came wrapped in pretty paper and tied with red ribbons. It meant recognizing that love, when twisted by loneliness and obsession, could become something dark. And it meant never forgetting that behind every gift was a person. Sometimes that person just wanted to share kindness, and sometimes they wanted to be noticed. The question was knowing which was which before it was too late. Daniel started his car and drove home through London's streets, leaving Kensington Palace behind. But the weight of what he'd learned stayed with him. In a Camden flat, a shrine had been dismantled. Photographs removed from walls, maps thrown away. The physical evidence of obsession erased, but the feeling behind it remained somewhere in Claire Whitmore's mind, even as doctors tried to help her understand it, heal from it, move past it, and in Kensington Palace, Kate Middleton would continue her life, protected by people she'd never meet, saved from threats she'd never know existed. That was how it worked. That was how it had to be. And Daniel Matthews, the royal guard who'd intercepted a gift that changed everything, would return tomorrow to do it all again. Because somewhere in London, someone was already writing another letter, wrapping another package, building another fantasy. And when it arrived at the palace gates, Daniel would be there, watching, waiting, protecting, one X-ray at a time.